Hey everybody, I'm Dale Spoonmore, the creator of the From Seed to Spoon mobile app. I'm out here in my backyard Oklahoma garden, and we're going to give you a tour to show you what we're growing now, and we're going to talk about kind of what we're planting soon, although we're almost done for the season. But really, we're going to talk about our strategy for what we're going to do over the winter, what we're going to do over the fall to get ready for next season, how we're going to grow the stuff we've already planted in the fall. So without too much further ado, let's just get started. So let's see what we have out here. So this is the overall garden, and half of this is full of things that we planted in the spring. It's grown over the summer and is going to grow all the way until it freezes, and then it's going to die, and then we're not going to have anything there in those spots unless we can get some cover crops going, and I'll talk more about that later. But really the main area that we're growing for right now for the fall is this area in here, and then a little bit over there that I'll show in a minute. But I want to focus on this area first. So ignore this bed. This is just full of morning glories and a sage that I'm trying to transplant. But up here is one of our first salad green beds. So this is Swiss chard that we planted in the spring that survived over the summer. And these leaves are really great to use as tortilla replacements and wraps. So we'll obviously these have some holes, but you know, this one would be a great one because it doesn't have as many holes on it. It's got a spider though. So you could use that as a tortilla replacement, fill it full of rice and chicken, or you know, tomatoes or anything else from the garden. And the rest of this is baby kale, and this is a dinosaur kale transplant, and just different varieties of things that we grow for salad greens and for smoothies and things like that. And these are really easy to grow, and technically if you're in Oklahoma or in a region, you know, in the southern part of the US, you still have time to get seeds in the ground for spinach and kale, especially if you do a transplant of kale like that. It's really the time to do that. Like it's a perfect time to do that. And a transplant would be about this size. So I got this one actually from Prairie Wind Nursery down in Norman, and then you just transplant it in, and they're gonna thrive over the winter here. I mean, kale comes from Russia, so it can tolerate temperatures that get really, really cold. We've also got some peppers that are from the summer that are still holding on here. We had a really cold night. It got in the 40s, and I thought we were gonna lose these. We did lose one of our other peppers. I could see that it got killed off from it, but this one's still surviving. So over here is the rest of our green area, basically. So we've got a mix of, this is broccoli here, and then we've got kale, and then we have a variety of different stages of growth right now. So we planted these seeds that are sprouting. Well, these plants here were planted from seed, and we planted these probably, I think it was a month ago or so that we planted those. The transplants we planted a few weeks ago. So we have different stages of growth. These we're going to be able to start harvesting from pretty soon, whereas this, I don't even know if we're going to harvest that much on it. We'll probably get one harvest off of it before it gets too cold, and that's really just going to be to thin things down, because right now you can see it's planted very dense. We've got a lot of spinach. Mary planted this area really well, so you know, and that was fine because we eat those thinnings. So I don't know if you can see with the camera right now, but if you can come in here and show, and what I want to talk about here is these. So whenever we plant spinach and we just throw seeds around, you're going to end up with a lot of plants that come up close together like this. Well, now is the perfect time to start going through and thinning these down to the recommended plantings in our app for square foot gardening. So if you're not familiar with square foot gardening, the concept is basically this. You take each square foot of your garden and you divide it into squares, and you plant those squares according to this system. So this is the seeding square that makes the square foot gardening method easy, and you can lay it down, and then each plant has a recommended spacing, and our app will help guide you through that. So for carrots, it's 16 per square. So you see that the red is 16, so you just put a seed in every red spot. And it also makes it really great for kids, makes it easy for them to learn how to plant. It helps them learn colors and counting. We really like these things for that. So that's what you thin down to. So for spinach, it's 9 per square, which is every yellow. And I would go through and just basically thin down to that spacing. So whenever this is full grown, it needs to have at least 3 inches, 2 or 3 inches between it and its counterpart spinach. So now's the time to start going through and thinning those down. I do want to mention that you don't want to just pull them up, because that can disturb the roots of the other plants around it. You want to get some scissors, just come through and cut it at the bottom. And then those are great to use in salads. They are more nutritious than just, you know, a standard spinach leaf that you're used to, because it has all of the nutrition from the seed, plus a couple rounds of photosynthesis, and it's all contained in one small package, and it's basically a microgreen at that point. So we like to have a mix of those in our diet, and it makes it easy to have them just by throwing seeds everywhere and then thinning them down. So that's basically our strategy with greens. We have these seeds that we planted, you know, like I said, a month ago. We're gonna let those mostly grow, and then they're gonna overwinter. We may have to cover them a little bit if we're gonna have some really harsh nights, and we'll build contraptions kind of like this thing. I don't know if you can see that in the camera, but these domes that go over our beds, we'll build these for all the other beds, and then we'll cover them with plastic. The kale probably won't need it, and the spinach probably won't either, but some of our more tender things like lettuce and beets and you know, carrots, like we'll cover those on those really cold nights in the winter. I do want to talk about broccoli, because our strategy for growing broccoli has evolved over the years. So when we first started growing broccoli, we thought of broccoli as the way that we did when we bought it from the store, which was you buy, you know, a large head of broccoli at the store, and that's what we thought we had to grow, was this giant head of broccoli. And then we realized that it takes a while to get that large head of broccoli. And if there's a hail storm in the middle of the growing season, then you're not going to get that large head of broccoli the way you expected. And broccoli has way more value than just that large head that it grows. I mean, this entire plant is edible. So once we learned that, and we started just eating the leaves off of broccoli plants and things like that, we really started to value broccoli more. And now we've switched to growing broccoli varieties that are more sprouting in nature than ones that create these large heads. So this is a sprouting broccoli here, and it's going to create a bunch of side shoots that send off these little broccoli heads. And it's just, it's an easier, especially in the fall when you don't have as long of a season before it's gonna get really cold, you're gonna get way more broccoli out of a variety like that. So I think that pretty much covers our greens and our broccoli that we're going out in the garden. Okay, so that is basically everything that's through here is a mix of greens, broccoli, and stuff that's holding on from the summer, like these peppers we have through here. So as we move this way, we're starting to get into the stuff that we planted in the spring that's been growing all summer. So we've got chives here. This is Vietnamese cilantro, which is, it's called Rau Ram. It's not technically related to cilantro, but it has a similar flavor, and it can tolerate heat. So in the summer, we'll switch to this as a replacement for cilantro. We also have some herbs over here. This is thyme, and we've got a bee balm, a lemon balm. We've got a mix of all sorts of stuff like that through here. And then we have a lot of beans. So all these vining things, well, not all of them. These are loofahs. I'll talk about those here in a second. But the rest of it, these are beans. And we have bush beans and southern peas and kind of that scattered all throughout here. So let's talk about loofah for a second and what these are, because I had never heard of these before I started growing food. And I first saw these down at the Cleveland County Extension. They have a garden down there in Norman, Oklahoma, that you can go look at their plants, and they have a bunch of different types of plants that you can look at, and this was something they had there. And these loofahs are pretty awesome, because what they'll do is they'll grow, and then you can actually harvest them at this size, a little bit smaller than this, and cook them. We have not actually eaten them yet. We're growing them for the purpose of what they result in when they're done. So we'll let them grow all the way to full size, and then we'll take them off the vine and we'll let them dry. And I've got one inside that I'll go get here in a minute, and we'll show this. But once they dry, you peel the skin off, and you have a loofah, so a sponge basically. And we use those to clean, both for ourselves and as you know, in the kitchen. Like, they're really handy to have around, and it's so cool that you can just grow them. And they're vining, you know, they vine up this trellis, and then they're really prolific. These came up on their own from last year. I didn't even plant loofah this year, but we have this one and another one over there, and then a couple that I accidentally killed last month that came up on their own. And a lot of things, I want to talk about how all or most of this was planted because we took a lot of the summer off for the most part. Once May came around, we took our RV and we started traveling around the country, and we went to Arizona, where Carrie's from, and we traveled to New Mexico, and we spent a lot of time away from the garden. And before we did that, I kind of just came out here and I wanted there to be food when I got back, so I started just throwing seeds. And this sounds crazy, but it's literally what I did. I threw seeds for southern peas and for basil and for things like that I knew would do well in those environments, in the heat, if I just had automated watering set up. And that's what we did. And this is basically what we came back to. So we did have, peppers that we transplanted before we left. These weren't started from seed, those were all transplanted. Again, these are the ones that were killed off in that frost that we had the other night. But it looks like the only one that we lost. This pepper here is doing fine. But so this is a mix of all sorts of stuff in here. We've got southern peas and beans everywhere. This is our only okra plant here. And if you've never grown okra, it is pretty awesome because these are this is maybe a little too big, but no, still good. It may sound weird, but raw okra. So it has a sweetness to it, and especially in the middle of the summer when it's really hot, this is one of my favorite snacks to have. So my favorite ways to have okra is just to eat it raw. We don't even really cook it any other way than that, as I just come out here and eat it as a snack. So the rest of through here, we have a mix of basils and peppers still, a bunch of different types of basil. This is a lime basil, a purple basil. We've got, I think these are chives or leeks, or not, they're not chives, they're leeks or onions. It's a jungle out here. So once all of this dies off, we will we'll come through and plant this with a cover crop. And basically what that means is I don't want this soil to be completely bare. Especially once winter hits, then the soil organisms that are in there that are feeding our plants are not going to live as, they're not going to tolerate the winter as well if they don't have some sort of protection. So the cover crop is that protection for me over the winter. So as soon as this stuff dies off, I'm going to try and get either, clover or some other winter hardy cover crop going that I can get established before we get those really, really cold temperatures, so I can have a bed of something on here over the winter in the areas that I don't have the spinach and the kale and all of that in. So that's what we'll be doing with these areas as soon as this stuff dies off. We have some sweet potatoes through here also, and just a mix of all sorts of stuff. There's beans everywhere. Most of these beans are dried now at this point. You can also see the a couple nymphs of, so these are stink bugs nymphs. So we've got quite a few of these around the garden, but if you download our app, it will show you how to manage them. We have not been out here managing them, but they're pretty easy to deal with. So these are black-eyed peas that we've grown. So you can harvest these whenever they are green, or these are actually a little late to harvest to eat as black-eyed peas, but we could plant these for next season. See all these wasps around here? I used to be so terrified of these things when I was out here, but I've been out here, every single day practically since we started this garden around these wasps, bumping up against them, and I haven't been stung once. And what they're doing is they're going through and they're hunting. They're looking for caterpillars, they're feeding on all sorts of stuff, and they're helping us out. So these are the kind of allies that we have in our garden. This is a bee here that's going through and helping with pollination. There's bad bugs in here too. I mean, I see right there is another stink bug nymph. But if I were to spray pesticide on here to kill, the stink bug, there's an adult of the stink bug. I don't know if y'all can see this at all, but if I were to spray pesticide on here to kill those, well, it's going to kill all these wasps and these spiders that are under here and stuff too. And that may sound like a good thing to a lot of people, but to me it doesn't, because now all of the work that these wasps are doing and these spiders are doing, I've got to start finding a way to get that work done. And right now they're just doing the work for me for free, and I don't have to talk them into it at all. But if I if I start using pesticide, now I have to be the one to manage the insects, and I want to keep a hands-off approach. So Sometimes, you know, we'll get an infestation of bugs here and there, but we'll let nature correct itself. And it's happening, because look, right here is an orb weaver spider that set up shop because it knows that there's all these other bugs around here. So now they're starting to fall in here, and then nature is going to start correcting itself. And that's what we try and do with our garden, is allow nature to do that. And we do help out. Like if I spot a bug, and I'll throw it into one of these webs, you know, like it's a fun game that the kids like to do to feed the spider and watch it eat. So we've got more beans through here too. These are these yard long beans that we really like to grow, because you get a lot of bang for your buck on these. And just, you know, 5 or 6 of them can be a nice little meal for a few people. Over here we have mostly, so this is a mix of peppers over here, and again, more beans. These are some purple black-eyed peas here. We've got another archway here that had beans growing on it, but I'm not sure what happened to those and how. I think I accidentally killed those. That's probably what happened here, because I was doing a lot of cleanup around this area, and I'm not a super gentle person while I do that, and sometimes I accidentally kill things. So I think that's what happened there. Over here we have, over here we have our wildflower area, and we still have some nice stuff. I'll take this one in for Carrie. That'll get me some brownie points. So I've talked about living shade walls before, and this is what I'm referring to. So this is a wall that we have placed on the north side of the bed, and this isn't necessarily for shade as much as more it is for wind protection and to have an area for things to grow up. But you could put this on the west side of a raised bed, for example, and then it's going to provide shade in the afternoon. But this is a really simple structure that we built with just T-posts and then this rebar mesh that we got at Home Depot or Lowe's or wherever, one of those places. It's really cheap. It's like $8 for this panel, and then the T-posts we get for free because they're always on the side of the road on big trash day. Here in Oklahoma, that's a thing where people put their trash out once a month, and anyway, they're always on the side of the road for that. And again, this is where we have loofah growing on this, and we have beans. The loofah came up on their own, the beans we planted, and they basically took over this. And now it provides, you know, wind protection. It provides, you know, depending on where it is, it can be shade. But if you don't have an area of shade in your garden, this is how you can build something like that. And you can also build arches, you know, as we've done here with these panels. We have a shade wall over here that is on the west side of a raised bed. This is an example here of a shade wall that's placed on the west side of a bed. So this is full of beans for the most part. It looks like there's a tomato in here that's still vining up. It's crazy. This is a jungle, y'all. Like I said, I took the summer off and I just wanted to see what would happen. Like, this is basically the Jurassic Park of gardens is what happened here. I just like threw a bunch of seeds out and just wanted to see what would happen. And so we've got over here on this shade wall, this provides protection for things here in the middle of the really hot afternoons. We don't really need that anymore, but in the summer, it was valuable to have that there to help the beans down here flourish. You know, these beans were shading the other ones. So we got a lot of beans off of this area. And we've also got a mix of other basils through here. This is a pepper plant that's loaded up with peppers. And down below, we've got some oreganos and some other herbs mixed down below. Over in this bed, we've got, again, just more peppers and beans and then herbs. So this is sage, a giant sage bush that is basically taken over that I am going to be transplanting somewhere else. Because I don't want to have this much of the area sage, because I use sage like twice a year and it's a little in proportion. But it does smell amazing, and we like to use it for purposes like that. And I want it to be in the garden, just not right here. So I'm going to move it probably just over on the other side of that fence, actually, down where that pile of wood is right now. I'm going to put this over there, and then that'll be a nice little thing to have over there. This is an example of another one of the fences that we grow things up. Again, more beans all through here. These are cucumbers that have died now at this point. Cucumber beetles probably took those out. I'm not really a fan of cucumbers. I don't like to eat them. I just wanted to grow this variety because it was a lemon variety. I want to see if they were any different, but I still have not really found I still don't really like cucumbers. I'm still trying to figure out a way to like them, but I don't have it yet. Okay, so over here are a couple of our smart pots. So this is a giant smart pot that you can order off their website. And then this is one that you can get off of Amazon, or you can find links in our app. This is the big bag bed. And right now we have a bunch of greens that I threw seeds for all through here, and you can see them starting to sprout. I planted these a little bit later than the ones that I showed earlier. So these are in a different stage. So this is mostly lettuce also too. So we've got that through here. Again, more basil, a different type of basil. We have a lot of different varieties of basil in our garden in the summer. This is a cinnamon basil. So it's a Thai basil that we use in a lot of stir fries and curry inspired things. And we really like having that. And we have a lot of different types of basil because basil is one of the main things that we use to flavor our dishes and to make them taste, you know, unique in flavor. So from night to night, we can switch up from having a lemon basil or a lime basil or a cinnamon basil, and then we can make a meal taste completely different using the same ingredients. So that's how we try. And you know, I'm not going to say we've been good about this lately. We spent pretty much all of our time trying to build our app and our business the past year, and we haven't been out here as much as we should have. But in the beginning, especially when we committed the first 6 months of this to really only eating the stuff in this garden. And we did a good job of that, but it got really boring in a hurry, eating zucchini every single day that tasted the exact same way. So we started growing more basils and oreganos and different flavors of things so that we could add those flavors into the dishes. And then things had a different taste from night to night. And it helped keep us engaged in it. Whereas if we hadn't have done that, I don't know, like we may have gotten bored with it and we would have given up on the idea. But once we started adding in all these herbs, now there were endless possibilities. And I still feel that way about, you know, dishes from the garden, that we can just add different types of basil or thyme. And you know, the same obsessive energy that I put into collecting football cards when I was a kid goes into collecting different herbs now, so that we can have different varieties to use in the kitchen. Over here on this side, we have our Blackberry area. So I set up this fence to try and keep them from overpowering because they were kind of taking over this whole area. So again, this was just T-posts and one of these hardware mesh panels. So we set this up to try and hold them up, but these are blackberries that are doing really, really well. They are so easy to grow in Oklahoma. I mean, they grow wild here, so it makes sense, but we planted these in the ground a couple years ago, and we haven't really done anything with them since, other than letting it rain, and I fertilize them every now and then. But we got a lot of blackberries off of them this year in May and June, and we're gonna get a lot more next year. So we're looking forward to planting more things like this that produce every year without us having to keep coming out here and doing things. That's one of the things we want to do more of, is plant more perennial crops like berries. So I definitely recommend planting as many of those as you can. They are really easy to grow, and they're prolific, and they come back year after year, and it's a more sustainable way to grow them. Okay, so over on this side of the garden is one of our shade area gardens. So shade is really important in your garden to use, especially in the summer, because in Oklahoma, especially because it gets so hot here that a lot of the plants cannot tolerate that. So we grow things over on this side of the shed because it's a lot cooler here in the middle of the day, because it stops getting sun around 2 or 3 o'clock. So typically we grow greens here, like spinach and kale, that does not tolerate the heat as well. And we'll grow that here because it'll help it out. Once all of that died this year, we experimented, again, this was part of the great Southern pea throwing event of earlier this year, where I just threw seeds everywhere, and I threw them over here too, because I wanted to see how well Southern peas would grow in an area that did not get full sun, because up until now I've only grown them in areas where they got full sun. And it's just, I'm always doing experiments out here, just trying to learn how far you can push things and what works and what doesn't work. And you can see the difference here. So these Southern peas are not as prolific as the ones we had over there. They still produce peas. So they still grew, it still worked, they just weren't as prolific. So now I know Southern peas we're only going to plant over in areas that get full sun. So when plants don't get enough sun, then they're not as healthy. So, you know, they're more easily susceptible to diseases and pests and things like that. So these are the kind of things we're doing with our garden. We don't necessarily use all of this just to grow food for ourselves. We're trying to get better about actually eating stuff from here, but I mean, frankly, we're not super great about that. This is more of my playground more than anything, where I like to come out here and grow a lot of different things, and we grow different varieties of things, and we're always trying to learn what works on this scale, because I feel like we have one of the best test beds you can imagine here in Oklahoma, because we have all the extreme conditions you can imagine. We have super cold temperatures, we have tornadoes, we have earthquakes now, we have floods, we have drought, we have all of it in the same year or sometimes in the same month. It's just crazy weather here. And I feel like we can use that as an opportunity to test and see what works. So in the winters, we can see, what can really survive the cold temperatures. And then in the summer, we can find out what really survives the hot temperatures. So that's what we're doing in our garden here, so that ultimately we can provide the best data for you in the app. This isn't just information that we've sourced or stuff that we've tried once or twice. We're testing this continually, and we're seeing what you can actually do and what you can grow and the most efficient way to grow it. And we're challenging some of the old ideas, and we're learning that sometimes, some of those old ideas are really good and we need to not challenge those, but it's the process that we really enjoy. And that's ultimately why we built our app, because we wanted to take all of this stuff that we're doing and put it somewhere to help other people grow their food too. Because when we first started doing this, it was difficult and we had so many challenges, and I did everything the wrong way. Even though I read all these books, I didn't do what they told me to do. I challenged the old ideas, and I learned, through that. And we've learned through meeting people that have been growing food their entire lives in Oklahoma, that have been incredibly gracious about teaching us, and through taking classes and just absorbing all of the knowledge that we can find. We take all of that and we put it into our app, and then we take my lifetime of spending, all my time on a computer to make it simple for you to grow food using, your phone. So it'll give you exact planting dates that tell you when you can plant based on where you live. It'll guide you through knowing what to plant next to each thing, because that was one thing that we had problems with in the beginning, was just knowing what you plant next to what. Like, what do you plant carrots next to? Back then I didn't know. When do you plant carrots? How do you plant them? All of these things that felt very overwhelming in the beginning of trying to memorize, all this information for all these different vegetables. You can have them one place in your app, on your phone. It'll work anywhere. Even if you don't have internet connection, it'll still work, and you can take it with you. It'll give you planting dates no matter where you are in the country right now. Soon it will be in the entire world. It will do that. But right now, anywhere in the United States, you'll be able to get planting dates that are specific to where you live and to your location. So let's keep talking about what we're growing out here over on this side. The main purpose is to produce material that goes into our compost over there to make more soil, to make more compost, because compost is our main ingredient that we use in soil mixes, and it's our main fertilizer that we use. It's the life of our garden. And this is how we make it. We take things like comfrey. This is comfrey here. And comfrey's roots go way down, like 20 to 30 feet sometimes, and they pull up nutrients from way down below, and they pull them into these leaves. And then we take these leaves and we'll go through, and this is what I'll do. And don't worry, this plant will be fine. It will recover in a hurry. And I just go through and I pull all these off. And then, I'll do this on a larger scale, obviously. I'll go through and cut a bunch and then gather it and then bring it over here and throw it in a pile. That's all there is to it. There's a little more to it than that, but then the initial stages, that's all there is to it, is you just take all this organic matter and you start accumulating it into a pile. And then what you do is you start adding other stuff. So not just stuff like this, but I'll add in rabbit manure, or the shavings from the bed from the rabbit, or we'll add in wood chips or coffee grounds, or just any type of organic material we can get our hands on. We'll start adding all that over there into the compost and mixing it together. And what we're left with, move this out of the way so I can show you one of our batches of compost that we have already that's been made. Oh, I'm not gonna disturb her. They're everywhere. I don't even know how many of these orb weavers that we have now, but they're everywhere. And they may look scary, but these are some of the best garden helpers you can have in your garden. I could probably handle her and I wouldn't get bitten. I've not gotten myself to actually do it yet, but I could. Even if she did bite me, it wouldn't be a big deal, because it'd be equivalent to an ant bite, basically, because she has no venom that can hurt me, and she's pretty docile. So we have these everywhere. I say she because if you see one on a web like this, it's a she. The males are much smaller, and they get eaten once they mate. So that's why we've named all of these Nelly Furtado, because the song Maneater, that was the inspiration behind that. So we call them Nellies. So the kids always ask, how many Nellies do we have, or where are the Nellies? And so we have these all around the garden, and they help us out by, I mean, she's eating something right now. It's a, I think that's a ladybug. So, you know, they're not foolproof. I mean, sometimes they get the good bugs too, but they're getting a lot of bad bugs too. There's mosquitoes that get caught up in here. There's, I'm all the time seeing different, you know, bad bugs in their webs, and they're helping us out so that I don't have to be out here on patrol looking for them. We've got another Nellie over there up against the fence over by the Comfrey, and we've got them everywhere. So, man, I'm gonna have to disturb her to show the compost. This is a moral dilemma. All right, Nellie, just rebuild your web here in a bit, all right? Oh, we did it. Okay, no spiders disturbed. So this is what we are left with at the end of this whole composting process that I told you about, where we take our, you know, our plant scraps and all that we put together, we toss it back and forth, and this is what we get with it from it when it's all said and done. And this is pure plant gold. This is what we use for our fertilizer. The only fertilizer we buy other than this is fish fertilizer, which is just a heavy dose of nitrogen. And that's it. And I can make that myself if I wanted to. I've done it once. It's a very gross process where you take dead fish and blend them together. I didn't want to do it more than once. So now I just decided I'm going to buy it. So, but that's the only fertilizer I buy. Other than that, we use our compost, and we use things we get out of the worm bin, which I'll show here in a second, but that's it. So the rest of this bed, I mentioned the Comfrey already. The Comfrey here all came up on its own. It's very prolific, it'll spread like crazy, so be aware of that, but I'm okay with that because I want a lot of plant material. I also planted peas through here, so these are bush peas, and I've never grown bush peas before, which are varieties that only get 2 or 3 feet tall and then produce a lot of peas instead of growing, you know, long vines that produce peas. So I'm trying those out in here. I'm curious to see how those do. Peas you can also harvest at any stage of growth, kind of like broccoli. So you could harvest them at this stage and then stir fry them. And we're looking forward to do that with those as well. The variety is called Little Marvel for the bush. So we'll see how those do. It's my first time growing them. So if you want to know more about how to make your own compost, check out the video that we've shot before that talks in detail about everything that we do to make this. I'll link to this down in the description, and you can learn all about how we make our own compost right in our own backyard. I also talk about how we built this using just recycled pallet lumber and some scrap materials that we already had. So we basically built this for free, except for the cost of the screws. So I talk all about how we did that. So as we move over here, these are the raised beds that we built that are raised up off the ground. We originally built these because we wanted to have our gardens over by the fence, and we wanted them to get sunlight in the fall and in the spring, whenever the sun was at an angle where it was casting a shadow from the fence. So we thought if we got them up off the ground, they would get sun. What we discovered was that these beds are very temperamental. In the summer, it's hard to keep things alive. In the winter, it's hard to keep things alive. But in the fringe seasons, it's great. And for things that are super hardy, they're great as well. So we have, these are mostly our salad bars is the way we view these, so that if any wild rabbits get into the garden, we don't have to worry about them taking these out. The pests we deal with on these are mostly limited to insects, and we don't have to deal with the rodent pests as much on these. So we have a mix of all different types of greens through here. This is kale here, and this is a kale that I planted in the spring that did survive over the summer, and now is still here. And we're eating off of this one now. Everything else in here are transplants that we put in here a week or two ago that we're gonna start harvesting from here really soon. We've got dinosaur kale, we've got red Russian kale, we've got white Russian kale, we've got all different types of kale, we've got Swiss chard, which again I mentioned earlier, we like to use these leaves as tortilla replacements and wraps. They're really, really good for that. We have collard greens. Collard greens are great because they will survive the summer here typically as well, and they're pretty cold hardy as well. So it's a great green to have, and it produces another thick leaf that you can use as a tortilla replacement. We have bok choy that we have scattered around the garden as well, which is basically how we view our cabbage. It's a Chinese cabbage, and instead of growing cabbage heads that you have to wait for them to get large and then harvest them and you've got to fight off pests the whole time, we like to grow more of these leaf varieties of cabbage, like these bok choys and these other Chinese cabbages that just a little easier to grow, especially with our pests that we have here. Again, this is another bed that is full of transplants, and also there's seeds that are coming up as well. We seeded these beds. There's some weeds coming up, but there's also kale and some other seeds coming up through here. We've been fighting some pests on here. You can see like the Swiss chard here. When we transplanted it, had several leaves and they got chewed off. So we're definitely fighting some pests, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to build some of those PVC domes that I showed earlier to go over these, and I'm going to put protection over it. Just some plastic, 6 mil liner that goes over it, and then that will help keep the pests off them. So we're going to be building those very soon, over the next few weeks, and we're going to be building a lot of them to cover. The goal is to get them for all of our raised beds out there. I don't know if that's going to happen, but definitely these raised ones, and definitely the ones that have greens in them and these things are getting attacked, we're going to build them. And then you can also use insect netting instead of the plastic, which we'll probably have to do in the beginning, because if it gets above 70 degrees, you've got to prop that plastic up, and I know I'm going to forget one of those days. So I don't do that. I don't put the plastic on until it's definitely cold, but I'll put the insect netting on first, and that'll help keep the insects off, and then we can put the plastic over top of that afterwards, and then we have 2 layers of protection for the plants. Over on this side is another one of the raised beds that we this is another one of our shade raised beds. Is how it started, was we wanted to have an area to plant greens in the summer. Or not plant them in the summer, but plant them in the spring and let them grow through the summer, because they were protected from the sun. This is before we had discovered some of the shade wall methods that I mentioned earlier that we showed. And now this has basically become a bed of mint. We planted 7 or 8 different types of mint in here, and knew it was going to be chaos, and just wanted to see chaos happen and just see what happened. So this entire area is full of mint now, and this is just going to be our dedicated mint area where we can come out here and get different types of mint. We're also going to experiment with planting things like tomatoes directly in the mint, to see if the mint will help keep pests away and things like that. So we'll take a tomato transplant, grow it indoors until it gets a couple feet tall, and then just transplant it directly in the bed of mint, and then have the mint around it. We're going to try things like that, just to see how well it works. But this is going to be a dedicated mint area. It's all different types of mint. I don't know how we're going to keep track of what varieties what, but it doesn't really matter, because they all have nutrition, they all taste good, and the whole purpose of us having mint is really just to have refreshing teas. So in the summer, we'll take mint leaves, we'll put them inside of water, let them soak for a few hours, with some ice, and then it's a really nice, refreshing drink. And I've been a lifelong soda addict, and if I've got to stay completely away from it. And this really helps me, because it lets me get a taste of something refreshing that isn't just water. And I try to use these a lot in the summer, especially to stay hydrated. So when we're over at the compost, I mentioned our worm bin and the things we get from it, and this is what our worm bin is. So we built this again out of pallet wood. Most everything that we've built that involves worms or compost, I'm not going to spend money on really good wood for that. So we use pallet wood. Now it is important to mention that if you're going to use pallet wood, you need to get wood that is marked as heat treated. There should be an HT stamp somewhere on the pallet, and that lets you know that there weren't chemicals involved in the treating process, because you don't want to have a bunch of those chemicals leaching into all this stuff, because the whole point of us growing our own food is to get away from those chemicals. So you don't want to put it right back into the process. So this is a simple construction we built, just throwing some screws together to hold it up, and then we filled it with a mix of stuff. So there's a lot of all sorts of stuff in here. So we started off this with our junk mail, which you can see kind of left behind here, paper scraps. It's changed the way I view mail. I used to really hate mail, but now it's worm material. So I'm excited to shred it when I see my mail come in. And we can take it and then throw it in here, and the worms use that as, it's a couple different things. They eat it, but it's also their bedding material. And then we add in wood chips and coffee grounds, and then really the big thing we add is food scraps. So you can see some food scraps here. I've got some eggshells in there. There's some other stuff in here. And basically we're just always adding stuff in here, and the worms go through and well, that's not a good thing to be. They don't eat plastic, so you can't put plastic in there. They're not that magical yet. Until we invent them, I guess. Just a matter of time. Okay, so this is what you get. And this isn't completely broken down, like there's still some particles in there, but this stuff is even better than compost for plants. because worms, not only does their poop, for lack of a better word, have nutrients in it for plants, it also has growth hormones for plants. So the nature is specifically engineered so that, you know, worms are the main mechanism of feeding plants. So they put out stuff that is perfect for plants. So we use that idea to supercharge our plantings. And what we'll do is at the end of, whenever we're going to use this in the spring, this entire pile will be just pretty much like this. You know, so it's all going to be, you know, perfect black gold. See some worms in here, so you can see kind of worms. These are red wigglers, the kind of worms you need to get for this kind of operation. You can buy them online. I got mine at Uncle Jim's Worm Farm. You can get them on Amazon also, or at your local nursery. But what they do, I'm getting off track a little bit, but what they do is they go through and they eat all the stuff you put in here, so the kitchen scraps, and then, you know, they poop it out, and then you take that and you put it in your garden. So when we go to plant seeds, we will sprinkle a handful of this, you know, over the planting area. If we're planting a transplant, we'll put a scoop of this in the bottom. And this is one of our main sources of nutrients for our plants. And it's how we get away without having to use any chemical fertilizers or anything like that. So in Oklahoma, it gets very hot in the summer, and worms are temperamental. Very much so. So we try and help them out as much as we can. We got these burlap sheeting, or burlap sacks that we got some from friends, and we put them in here to cover them. And then in the winter, we also help the worms out by insulating them from the severe cold by surrounding this with haystacks. And you can see them here. And I'll get these for free starting here in a few months, because everyone has these out for Thanksgiving. And then as soon as it's Christmas season, they want them gone. And their Facebook is flooded with people that have free hay bales. And you can go get these on everywhere. And you can use these. So I use them to surround, you know, areas like this and insulate them, insulate the worms too. I don't really use them as compost material as much because I'm concerned about the chemicals that went into producing them. A lot of long-term herbicides can stay in things like this and then wreak havoc in your garden. I've dealt with that directly, and I've talked about that before. So check out the videos that talked about how to test your compost for herbicide. I've got a video that talks about that and why you should test if you want to know more about how you can avoid chemicals, you know, getting in your compost and ruining your garden like they did. This is what killed my tomatoes the first year, was I accidentally poisoned them with herbicide by using horse manure from horses that were eating from fields that were sprayed with aminopyrrolate, which was a long form herbicide that stays in their manure for a long time. So anyway, over here we have one of our rainwater collection systems, and this is hooked up to our gutters on the house so that when it rains, it flows into here. So one of the reasons why we made our app was because it was hard to keep track of what you plant, when you plant it, and then, you know, once you got in the details of what varieties do you plant of each thing. And we are still in the process of solving that what variety do you plant of each thing problem. And that's one thing we're really excited about, is building out a database that has, you know, every variety of tomato in it, and lets you go through and choose what kind of tomato you want to grow. And based on where you live, it'll recommend varieties and things like that. And that's one of the things that we're looking to build now, that we're in the process of building actually, with a pro version of our app. And the pro version of our app is going to do more than that. It's going to guide you through everything about how to grow each food. So it's going to, once you mark that you planted it, well, first of all, it'll help you know when to plant it. So it's going to give you push notifications telling you when it's time to plant. And then it's going to guide you through the process. So you can mark when you planted. And then once you mark that, it will tell you when the harvest dates come available, when it's going to sprout, you know, everything through the process. It'll send you push notifications for when you need a fertilizer, and we're going to use how much it's rained where you are to tell you when you need to rain or when you need to water, and all of those things. That's what we're building with the pro version of our app, and we really want your feedback as we're building this. So on our YouTube channel and on our Facebook pages, we are showing these features as we're building them. They're not going to be available, you know, for a while. We're targeting the beginning of next year to roll these features out, but we're showing them now, and we're building them now, and we're getting your feedback on them now about how we should build them. You can also stay up to date on what we're building and what we're doing with our weekly newsletter. So up until now, we've sent out a lot of emails from our website. Every blog post we put out sends out an email. We're going to stop that. And now every email that comes from us is going to be something that is written by us, that's handwritten, that's not automated. I feel like we were sending too many emails, and I want to start sending stuff that is more personalized, and when you get an email from us, you know that there's something in there that hopefully is going to be of value to you. So be looking for those emails to start coming out. We're going to send out a weekly newsletter that updates you on what we're doing with the app, and you know what we're growing, and just what we're doing with our garden, and you never know what's going to be in there. So, but it's going to be from us, and it's going to be personalized, and it's going to be hopefully valuable to you. So please, we want to hear your feedback on that too. If the emails, you know, what you like about our emails, what type of things you want to be emailed, like please let us know, so that we're not inundating you with too many things that you don't want to see, because we put out a lot of content. Carrie has blog posts going out, you know, 2 or 3 times a day. She has a full-time job teaching nursing, and then she has another full-time job as a content writer for Seed to Spoon, and she spends a lot of time writing those, and we have a lot going out. But I also don't want to overwhelm people with too much information too. So it's a mix. So let us know how we're doing on that, and let us know what features you want to see in the app. Go check out you know, what we've built so far. We're going to have another video this weekend that shows you the pro version, what we've built so far. So please watch that and give us your feedback on it, and let us know what we can do to make things better. You know, how we can improve, if it solves the problems that you've had in your garden, and if there's any other problems that we need to attempt to solve. So thank you for watching this video, and for telling your friends about the app. We've had such an overwhelming amount of support from people that have told other people about the app, and that have shared our message, and that have shared our blog posts, and all of that helps us out a tremendous amount. So on social media, if you see our post, if it's something that helps you out or provides value in your life, please share that with your network, and so that we can grow, and that other people can learn about our app, and that hopefully one day soon this can become our full-time jobs, and we can dedicate all of our time to helping you grow food. And that's our goal. We want to make this to where we can really dedicate our time to solving the problems of food in America. I mean, really, that's what we're trying to do here, is we want to make it easy for anybody to grow food, because we believe that anybody should be able to grow their own food in their backyard, and no one should have to worry about whether or not they're going to be able to eat, because it is not hard to grow food, and it can be hard in the beginning, but we've simplified it for you because we want to make it easy for you. So please let us know what we can do to make it easier for you to grow food. And with your help, I think we can really change the way that food is grown and eaten in America. And I think as a result, we're going to see a change in America. We're going to see a healthier society, because these are the changes I've seen within myself. When I started spending more time out here, you know, I started having relief from some of the anxiety and depression that I've battled my entire life. And I don't say I beat anxiety and depression, but it helps me manage it. And this is where I go when I feel stressed out. And I think if everybody had that, I think this would be a happier place. And those are the ideas that led to us starting this. And those are the ideas that continue to keep us going. You know, I can feel it when I don't spend enough time out here in the garden. I can feel it, and I can start to, you know, feel extra stress and extra anxiety, and it takes, you know, reconnecting back to why I do all this to get back to feeling passionate about all of this. And so please give us your feedback. Let us know, you know, what we can do, and thank you for watching. Hey, guy, get shoes on. Come outside. Help. Here. You come help, Bubba? Here you go. There's one. Throw it in there. There you go. Can you reach these? God. Here, get this one. Grab him. Grab it. Okay. Whoa. No, Mary, don't step in there. Mary's like, oh, I got this. I don't know what y'all are doing.